Snow fell in dense, silent sheets across the crumbling remains of Bastion Outpost. Once a proud Terran frontier station, it now lay in shattered ruin beneath the weight of the Galactic Enforcer's wrath. Concrete bunkers were split wide open. Steel beams jutted like broken bones into the frost-laced wind, and the distant horizon shimmered with the soft pulse of orbital fires still burning in low orbit. Among the wreckage, half buried in a drift of ash and snow, Commander Jace Rourke lay motionless. His armor, painted matte black and scarred by plasma burns, steamed in the cold as the warmth of his blood leached into the snow around him. One leg was twisted unnaturally beneath a collapsed support beam, a jagged fragment of metal punched through his thigh. Every breath he drew was a battle, each exhale a quiet snarl of pain. But he was alive. Barely. A low static crackled in his ear. His HUD flickered, damaged. No friendlies on the scanner. No movement. No reinforcements. His squad was gone. 20 soldiers, each one trained, trusted, and under his command. Gone in the first wave of the Enforcer's assault. Rourke swallowed the bitter taste of guilt. He'd seen wars before, but never like this. Boots crunched nearby. Rourke's fingers twitched toward the sidearm strapped to his thigh. But it was gone, ripped away during the collapse. He gritted his teeth and forced his head up, peering through a cracked visor. A squad of Enforcers approached with lazy confidence. 7 of them, all clad in silver exosuits marked with the golden insignia of the Galactic Dominion. Their armor gleamed despite the ruin around them. One of them laughed as he approached Rourke, a tall figure with a reptilian face and luminescent green eyes. "You see? Still alive," the Enforcer said in a clipped, accented tone. "Humans are stubborn. Like roaches." Another Enforcer prodded Rourke with the barrel of his rifle. This one was in charge. Pathetic now. Bleeding in the dirt. Rourke stared up at them, saying nothing. His jaw tightened, his hands clenched in the snow. "Record this," the first one said. A third Enforcer activated a hollow recorder, the lens blinking red as it captured the image of Earth's broken soldier. "Let them see what happens when they defy the Dominion," he continued. "Let them watch their champions fall." They posed around him, laughing as though taking a trophy photo. Something inside Rourke flared. Anger. Hot and silent, like an ember buried under ice. He had no strength to fight them. Not now. But he wasn't done. Not yet. The Enforcers began walking away, leaving him there to bleed out. "Wait," Rourke croaked. They paused. The leader turned, smug. "Final words, Terran." Rourke exhaled hard, activating the manual override on his damaged comm system. It sent a tight beam signal to the device implanted in his helmet. An ancient, last-resort frequency reserved for what Terran Command called Category Black failures. The signal, encoded and buried beneath 5 levels of encryption, fired into the ice. "Backups here," he whispered. The Enforcers chuckled. "No one is coming, human. Your world has already lost." They vanished into the storm, dismissing him as a corpse in waiting. Jace lay back, blood pooling around his hip, breath shallow. The signal had been sent. Whether it reached anything at all, he didn't know. But he had done his part. Now all he could do was endure. His mind drifted, chased by the wind. He thought of Earth, of rain falling on steel towers, of his daughter's smile, of the oath he had sworn not just to protect, but to defy, to stand when others fell, to resist. Time blurred. A distant rumble stirred the ice beneath him, subtle at first, like a tremor. The snow in nearby drifts shifted. Then silence. Then another low thrum, deeper this time, as if something ancient was waking far below the surface. His HUD blinked, an alert. Power signature detected. Location, 300 meters east. Unknown origin. He smiled. The cold gnawed at him. His body trembled, his fingers nearly numb. But his spirit refused to fade. In the vast silence, with death creeping ever closer, Jace Rourke clung to the one weapon the Enforcers could never measure: human defiance. He drifted into unconsciousness, just as the snow began to fall harder, like a curtain drawn over the stage. The Enforcers believed the story had ended. They were wrong. It was only the beginning. Beneath the ice, machines stirred. Long dormant circuits receive the encrypted signal, its ancient code forcing its way through layers of protective logic locks. Deep within a forgotten hangar buried under Bastion's foundations, something massive awakened. Condensation hissed against alloy plating as heat flushed through frozen coolant lines. Red lights blinked, slow and methodical, casting an ominous glow on steel walls engraved with Terran script. Juggernaut Protocol, Omega Class. Far above, Jace Rourke floated in a haze of half-consciousness. His body was failing, but his mind clung to the last fragments of clarity. Memories surfaced unbidden, some precise, others warped by pain. He remembered the council meetings back on Europa Station, the hushed voices and paranoid eyes, the engineers who whispered about AI-controlled war machines that were too dangerous to mass-produce. The Juggernaut had been humanity's gamble in a war it couldn't win by numbers alone. Experimental, forbidden, buried when peace seemed within reach. He had seen one once. Towering, monstrous, meant not just for battle, but domination. The Dominion had pushed Earth to the edge, and in response, Earth had built a monster under the ice. But only one. Jace had volunteered to serve near Bastion, not because he was eager to fight, but because he knew what lay beneath it. He had trained here, walked these halls before they were outposts, when they were little more than forward observation towers guarding against what the Dominion called inevitable integration. Integration had come with plasma bombardments and the eradication of border colonies. Earth had begged for time. The Enforcers had answered with orbital glassing. The Juggernaut had remained silent through it all, until now. The Dominion had always been arrogant. The Enforcers more so. They didn't expect survivors, nor retaliation. They believed that because they could wield planetary weapons, resistance was an illusion. That illusion was about to end. Below the snow, mechanical limbs uncoiled. Armor plates shifted and locked into place with seismic weight. The Juggernaut's systems scanned the environment. Local temperature, minus 29 degrees Celsius. Hostile presence, active. Combat protocol, engaged. Pilot presence, none. Remote link, active, source signal degraded, but sufficient. Jace, despite the bleeding, despite the pain, felt a flicker of connection. The neural uplink embedded in his skull years ago pulsed once, painfully. He reached inward, not with movement, but with will, feeding it the only command he could summon: survive. A mile away, the snow split like a wound. The ground heaved, trees cracked, and toppled as the white surface bulged upward. With a roar that shook the valley, the Juggernaut rose from beneath centuries of frost. 30 feet tall, hunched and brutish, the war machine's frame looked less like a vehicle and more like a predator sculpted from steel and hate. It bore no paint, no insignia, only scars from ancient tests and forgotten battles. Its eyes lit first, 4 red sensors blinking open, scanning, calculating, remembering. Within its systems, Jace's signal was translated and magnified. The Juggernaut recognized the voice. Commander Rourke, Terran Command Level 6. Combat clearance, pre-authorized. It began to walk. Elsewhere, inside the shattered walls of Bastion, the Enforcer squad heard the rumble. They paused, weapons raised, heads turning toward the sound. At first, they assumed it was the weather shifting again. Then the tremors deepened. Snow fell from branches. The air changed. "What is that?" one of them asked. "Seismic activity," another offered, uncertainty tightening his voice. Then came the sound they had not heard in decades. The mechanical roar of fusion-driven limbs forcing their way through frost and stone. One of the Enforcers checked his scanner. Anomalous power spike. No known Dominion tech. It was moving fast, and it was massive. The leader of the squad, the one who had mocked Rourke, narrowed his eyes. Reinforcements? No, the tech specialist shook his head. Nothing from orbit. This is local. Impossible, the leader muttered. They returned to where they had left Rourke. He was still there, barely conscious, blood mixing with the snow. But his face had changed. His eyes, once heavy with defeat, now glinted with something else. The leader stepped close again, annoyed. "What did you call?" Rourke coughed. and blood trickled down his chin. History. He passed out again before the Enforcer could respond. The Juggernaut reached the edge of the ruins. Its footfalls left craters in the earth. Ice cracked beneath its weight. Its twin autocannons rotated into ready position, heat vents steaming. It paused only for a second before it targeted the Dominion squad. The lead Enforcer's eyes widened. Scatter. Too late. The first shot screamed through the air and tore one of them in half. A plasma shell followed, detonating with enough force to flip an armored transport they had stationed near the outpost entrance. The Juggernaut moved with terrifying precision, each step shaking snow from the trees. Where it walked, fire followed. In Rourke's mind, the connection flared again. Painful. He felt the Juggernaut's calculations as if they were his own thoughts. Each target marked, each vector calculated, each threat assessed and neutralized. He wasn't piloting it. He didn't have the strength, but the link gave him presence, gave him influence. The machine knew his intent, and it obeyed. It remembered why it had been built. The Enforcers tried to retreat, but their exosuits, advanced as they were, weren't meant for this. The Juggernaut had been designed not just to fight armies, but to break them. And it was doing exactly that. Minutes passed. Then silence returned. Smoke curled into the sky. Ash mingled with falling snow. The Enforcers were gone. Some incinerated, some buried, none intact. The Juggernaut stood at the edge of the destruction, still and patient, awaiting further instruction. Its sensors scanned the ruins again. Found Rourke. Moved toward him. He awoke to the sound of hydraulics hissing. The sky above him darkened as the massive frame of the Juggernaut blocked the light. It knelt, slowly, like a beast lowering itself to a wounded master. A panel opened. A retrieval claw extended with surgical grace, lifting him from the ground. Pain burned through every nerve in his body, but he didn't cry out. He simply breathed and watched as the Juggernaut carried him toward the underground structure it had emerged from. Its internal medical bay, once theoretical, now prepared for use. The machine laid him gently onto the surgical cradle within its chest and sealed the compartment. He felt warmth again for the first time in hours. A sterile light. Scanning systems clicked on, assessing damage. Stabilization protocols engaged. Morphine floods, nanobot injections, organ scans. He felt his heart rate slow, his vision clear. And through it all, he smiled. Outside, Dominion satellites began to register the event. Scanners pinged unknown readings. Signals echoed up toward their battle cruisers in orbit. Terran technology. Old. Not supposed to exist. Then came the footage, an orbital drone, still active, capturing the Juggernaut's assault in full clarity. Dominion officers watched as a single human war machine dismantled an elite squad and reduced their forward outpost to rubble. The Juggernaut turned its head toward the drone, locked eyes with the camera, and didn't fire. It simply stood like a statement written in steel. A message. The Dominion had declared humanity broken. But something had survived. Deep inside the Juggernaut, Commander Jace Rourke drifted into a healing sleep, the hum of machinery all around him. He had bought time, not just for himself, but for Earth. And Earth would answer. The horizon burned. Smoke bled into the snow-choked sky as the Juggernaut stepped over the charred remains of the Dominion forward base. Its servos hissed with every movement, scarlet optics pulsing like the eyes of some ancient Titan reborn. Behind its armored chest plate, Commander Jace Rourke floated in a sedated half-consciousness, his body stabilized, broken bones mended with a lattice of nanites and synthetic mesh. Pain still swam beneath the surface, but he was aware, connected. Through the neural link, he felt the weight of the Juggernaut's limbs, the friction of its joints, the cold logic of its battle calculus. They were bonded now, man and machine, not just by technology, but by vengeance. The Dominion hadn't responded yet. Not fully. The orbital scanners had noticed the power spike, and the disappearance of their scout squad hadn't gone unnoticed, but they hadn't realized what they were facing. Not yet. The Juggernaut walked through the ruins like a ghost from a forgotten war, gathering tactical data, monitoring movement, scanning encrypted frequencies. Its software had evolved, drawing on decades of dormant upgrades, pulling from Jace's combat experiences like a hive mind awakening from hibernation. Jace pushed deeper into the interface, brushing past targeting subroutines and external threat assessments. He wasn't fully recovered, not nearly. His muscles still trembled when he tried to move, but he could think, and thinking was enough. Through a flicker of mental focus, he initiated a localized recon scan. There, heat signatures clustered 3 clicks north. Multiple exosuits, a Dominion supply convoy, reinforcements, maybe a command vehicle. The Juggernaut calculated odds, options, terrain advantages. A valley choked with trees and elevation gains offered high ground. Tactical superiority. Permission requested. Jace answered with a thought. Engage. The Juggernaut accelerated. Trees bent beneath its advance. Snow burst around its feet like artillery smoke. A flock of native birds erupted into the air, screaming into the gray as the machine descended into the valley with predatory grace. It moved like no mech should, fluid, efficient, unrelenting. This wasn't just Terran engineering. This was Terran desperation forged into brilliance. Every line of its body, every rotation of its joints, screamed with defiance. Humanity had always lagged in numbers, in tech, in fleets. But when they built something, they made it count. The convoy came into view. 5 armored personnel carriers flanked by enforcers in scout armor, less bulky than their frontline cousins, but faster. Their helmets flicked toward the thundering footsteps too late. The lead vehicle's turret swiveled, spitting pulse rounds that pinged uselessly against the Juggernaut's forward shield. A rail spike deployed from its shoulder and fired in response. 1 shot, 1 kill. The lead carrier exploded in a plume of molten metal and shrapnel. The enforcers scrambled. Too late. The Juggernaut descended on them like judgment. Twin autocannons spun to life, carving through armor and bone. The machine advanced, its right arm transforming into a plasma flail that ignited the forest in arcs of fire. One enforcer leapt for cover and was crushed beneath a hydraulic foot. Another tried to fire a guided missile. Jace saw it coming, pulsed a counter-signal, and the Juggernaut's anti-munition system intercepted it midair. It was a slaughter. One of the Dominion officers, braver or more arrogant than the rest, activated a comm beacon mid-retreat. Jace intercepted the signal, rerouted it through the Juggernaut's AI, and allowed just enough of the message to go through. Let them know. He wanted the Dominion to understand exactly what they had awakened. The last soldier attempted to flee on foot. Jace hesitated. The Juggernaut's targeting system hovered, waiting. In that moment, a flicker of old humanity pushed through the haze. Jace focused, narrowing the visual display. A young recruit, barely older than his own daughter had been. Scared, bleeding, running. Let him go, Jace murmured. The Juggernaut paused. Targeting reticle vanished. Some lessons weren't in the code. The machine turned from the valley of death and returned to higher ground. As it moved, Jace's vitals were analyzed again. His brain activity was sharpening. The medical AI inside the cockpit made a note. Consciousness stabilizing. He wouldn't need sedation much longer. Soon, he would walk again. But not yet. The sun was dipping behind the mountains now, casting long shadows through the skeletal forest. Jace allowed himself a moment to breathe, to think. The weight of the war returned to his chest. Not just the physical battle, but what it meant. Earth had always been seen as the underdog, the stubborn backwater that refused to kneel. The Dominion had offered diplomacy through superiority, demanded integration under the guise of unity. But unity through conquest was tyranny in gold-plated armor. He remembered the early campaigns, Mars, Titan, the fall of Ganymede. He remembered how the Dominion had bombarded civilian ships, cloaked it in bureaucracy, claimed it was a containment operation. He remembered standing before the UN's last military council, begging them to activate the Juggernaut protocol before it was too late. They hadn't listened. Now they had no choice. A warning light blinked on the Juggernaut's display. New pings. Orbital scans picking up atmospheric entry signatures. Multiple. Fast. Dropships. Dominion was responding. Jace sat up straighter in the med cradle, ignoring the protests of his body. He interfaced again, calling up satellite feeds. 6 ships, 1 large cruiser in low orbit, probably carrying reserves. The enforcers were mobilizing fully now, no longer dismissing this as a rogue anomaly. Good. Let them come. The Juggernaut calculated terrain options. There were choke points east of Bastion, narrow valleys, natural kill zones. With the right positioning, it could hold for hours, maybe longer. Long enough to let the rest of humanity see. Long enough for the signal to spread. Jace issued the command. The Juggernaut moved, heading east, toward the cliffs that overlooked the old transport road. Halfway there, Jace paused the machine and activated the Juggernaut's communications suite. He knew orbital surveillance was watching. He knew eyes across Dominion space were receiving fragments of footage. He didn't have much strength, but he had enough to make his voice heard. He tapped into the open Dominion frequency, routed through Terran encryption. "This is Commander Jace Rourke of the Terran Resistance," he said, his voice hoarse but clear. "To the Dominion. Your mistake wasn't attacking. It was assuming we'd stay dead." He terminated the signal. The Juggernaut reached the cliffs as the first dropships pierced the clouds. It braced. Jace's heart beat with calm fury. He no longer felt alone. Somewhere, on Earth, someone was watching. Somewhere, in the depths of Terran command, officers were sitting straighter in their chairs. Somewhere, other survivors were rising, encouraged by the footage, emboldened by the truth. The Juggernaut wasn't just a weapon. It was a symbol, and symbols sparked revolutions. The first dropship breached the clouds like a dagger of fire. Jace Rourke watched it descend through the Juggernaut's targeting sensors, each detail rendered with brutal precision. The curve of its armor, the Dominion insignia along its hull, the heat signature of soldiers packed inside. It wasn't just a strike team, it was a show of force. The Dominion didn't want to defeat him. They wanted to bury the symbol he had become. The Juggernaut stood poised on a ridge of fractured stone, its massive frame silhouetted against the pale dawn light. Below, the transport road wound through the valley like a scar. That was where they would land. Predictable. Efficient. It made sense to them. Jace hoped it would. He adjusted the Juggernaut's stance with a flicker of neural command. The armor plates locked tighter around the machine's core. The heavy autocannons whirred softly, tracking the descent of the enemy vessel. Far in the distance, other dropships followed, smaller, faster, but the first was the priority. It carried command. Inside the cockpit, the medical systems had completed their work. The pain was a dull echo now, manageable. He flexed his fingers, testing his control over the neural link. Everything responded smoothly. His body was still weak, but his mind burned with clarity. "Bring them," he muttered. The dropship touched down with mechanical precision, kicking up snow and ice in a burst of force. Its doors hissed open, and Dominion enforcers poured out, dozens of them, clad in new model armor, sleeker than the scout variants, bulkier than the recon suits. These were frontline troops. Professional. Disciplined. He recognized the formation, a siege line, backed by pulse cannons, supported by exowalkers. A coordinated assault. But they weren't ready for a 30-foot war machine. Jace allowed them to form up, gave them the illusion of control. Then he acted. The Juggernaut surged forward, its footsteps shattering stone and sending echoes up the canyon walls. The autocannons roared to life, spewing molten death down into the valley. The enforcers broke ranks immediately. Even trained troops scattered when faced with something they didn't understand. A pulse round struck the Juggernaut's side, splashing across its shielding like water against steel. Jace barely registered it. His focus was on the lead walker, the mobile artillery unit clunking into position. It raised its barrel. Jace moved faster. The Juggernaut's right arm transformed mid-run, shifting into a seismic hammer. He launched into a short-range jump, the boosters firing in coordinated bursts. The machine landed beside the walker with bone-rattling force and brought the hammer down. The shockwave cracked the earth and flattened 3 enforcers behind it. The fight became chaos. Dominion soldiers tried to reposition, but the Juggernaut was relentless. Jace guided it like a blade, cutting through their formations, disrupting their lines. He moved with ruthless efficiency, conserving ammo, targeting critical systems. He didn't fight for glory. He fought to endure. Another dropship arrived, then a third. Plasma fire lit the sky. Jace took cover behind a collapsed cliff wall, the Juggernaut crouching low. He accessed its drone system. 3 recon orbs launched skyward, relaying tactical data. Enemy movement was escalating. He was winning the battle, but they were adapting. These weren't fools. They were testing him, measuring. He opened the Juggernaut's long-range comms and activated the beacon. Not to the Dominion, but to Earth. This is Commander Rourke. Engagement confirmed. Bastion Valley under siege. Broadcasting Juggernaut protocol active. Requesting acknowledgement. He sent it, not knowing who would hear. Inside the Dominion fleet in low orbit, Admiral Vale stood watching the live feeds. His face, long and unreadable, was lit by the fire of multiple angles showing the battle below. A single Terran war machine, something they believed scrapped decades ago, was holding off a battalion. Worse, the symbol was spreading. Civilians were uploading the footage. Resistance cells across the sector were chanting the phrase. Backups here. Vale turned to his comms officer. Prepare orbital strike. Target the machine. Level the valley. But Admiral, Terran frequencies just spiked. If we fire now, they'll... I said fire. The order relayed. In orbit, the battlecruiser Javelin Ascendant adjusted its orientation, locked coordinates, and prepared the main plasma lance. On the surface, Jace felt it. A heat shift in the upper atmosphere. The Juggernaut's AI confirmed. Orbital weapon lock detected. Estimated time to impact, 60 seconds. He pulled back, finding partial cover behind a stone outcropping. It wouldn't be enough. The Juggernaut's shields reallocated energy to the upper hull. Cooling system screamed. The medbay warned him against further exertion. He ignored all. He had a decision to make. Run or stand. He chose to stand. The sky ignited. A column of blue light carved through the clouds, vaporizing everything in its path. Snow became steam. Rock liquefied. The Juggernaut's shields flared, groaned, and held, barely. The valley erupted around him, a hell's cape of flame and force. The AI rerouted power frantically. Internal temperature spiked. Then silence. Smoke choked the battlefield. Enforcers had either fled or been vaporized. Only the Juggernaut remained, scorched but standing, a silhouette against fire. Jace coughed hard, blood at the corner of his mouth, but he smiled. From orbit, Admiral Vale stared in disbelief. It survived? It stood still and took the hit, sir. Then send everything. Below, the Juggernaut's sensors registered multiple entry signals. 8 no, 10 dropships incoming. A final push. Jace slumped back into the seat. He was almost out of strength, but not hope. A ping echoed through the Juggernaut systems. A new signal. Not Dominion. Terran encryption. His heart lurched. A voice crackled over comms. Commander Rourke, this is the T-Ceph Arclight. Reinforcements inbound. Juggernaut's signature confirmed. We read you loud and clear. Backups here. Jace laughed, a raw, broken sound that echoed inside the cockpit. Tears stung his eyes. Through the smoke above, Terran ships broke the sky. Sleek, angular, armed to the teeth. Earth's new fleet, born in secret, raised in silence, now answering the call. Dropships carrying Terran infantry deployed beside the Juggernaut. Tactical walkers followed. Artillery emplacements locked into position. The balance shifted. Jace reconnected to the Juggernaut's neural core. One last surge of adrenaline pulsed through his system. The fight wasn't over. But now he wasn't alone. Dominion forces scrambled, caught between confusion and fear. They had prepared for resistance. They hadn't prepared for unity. Jace keyed the external broadcast. To every soul watching, Earth is not broken. We're not extinct. We're not conquered. We're here. We endured. And now we rise. The Juggernaut stepped forward once more, this time flanked by Terran steel and firepower. The war had changed, and it was far from over.